It's Monday night. It's 8 o'clock. You know what that means. It's time for Nerd Initiative TV Talk. This week, Umbrella Academy. Somebody play the intro.
I heard you on the wireless back in 52. Lying awake, intent and tuning in on you. If I was young, it didn't stop you coming through. They took the credit for your second symphony, rewritten by machine and new technology. And now I understand the problems you can see. I met your children. What did you tell them? Radio killed the radio star. Oh, radio killed the radio star. Oh, pictures came and broke your heart.
And what is going on? Coming at you live and direct straight from the sanctum of awesome, because that's the first time I've ever actually really done that during the intro. My name is Off the Cuff Tom, Nerd Initiative's pop culture connoisseur, and ladies and gentlemen, we are in the road to the Umbrella Academy. So I hope you're here to enjoy it. We're going to talk about season 1. We're going to talk only half of season 2 because I got to fill 2 episodes before season 4 starts next August 8th. So I hope you're all doing great out there. I apologize. We switched real quick from the bear because, well, something was always cooking, but then again, it got a little burnt a little too soon. So we decided let's do something a little more topical. We're going to talk some comic book stuff because, that's what we do over on Turner Page. Again, happy belated San Diego Comic-Con to everybody. What was your favorite thing that you heard about during Comic-Con? Please let us know in the comments below. On top of that, I got the chat going over here. Trust me, you can't see it, but I can. And I would definitely love to talk to you. So, having that said, the Umbrella Academy, always a good thing. We enjoy the Umbrella Academy over here. So let's get these little things up here. Now, we're going to talk about, the show, and we're going to not really get into the comic all that well, but, the show was originally based off the Dark Horse comic, the Umbrella Academy of the same name. It's about the family Hargreaves, which I think is fantastic. That's going to go over here because everyone wants to look at my face. Oh, my camera's off center. We need to fix that. Hold on. This is why we do it live. There you go. Look, I'm back in scene and theme. Fantastic. All right. So we're going to talk about the show. It's pretty interesting how they did this. I think that since we're going to talk season 1 right now, we're going to lead up. We're going to do season 1, half season 2. Having that said, the first episode starts off. It's called "We Only See Each Other at Weddings and Funerals." And that's a lot to be said. It's not just something that, the folks in the Umbrella Academy can relate to. It's something we all can relate to. We do get a little bit of an intro that in 1989, 43 women around the world simultaneously gave birth. And an eccentric millionaire, Reginald Hargreaves, manages to adopt 7 children, intending to turn them into a team of superpowered individuals. Now, we didn't know at the time, in 1989, or maybe Reginald did, I can't remember if we talked about that the kids had superpowers. But again, being the eccentric billionaire, he decided, well, I'm just going to buy these children, which that's a big no-no right there. So things that we can talk about in the first episode, the kids all get together when their father dies. Now, there were 7 children that were adopted, but only 6 were there. Why is that? Well, apparently there's a lot of tension between all of the kids because while they were on a mission, their brother had died, Ben. Ben had a very unique superpower or ability, I guess we could call it in the show. And we start to really get an idea for the kids, as they're called. First off, we're going to start right here. I got a nice little thing. So up here, I've got, this is Luther, also known as Number 1, the Space Boy. I also have his comic book adaptation there. So you can definitely see the difference of, where they had to make the ideas, what can we do for this far as TV production versus the comic book. So Luther is super strong. His body has been grafted onto that of a white gorilla. Poor kid, let me tell you. He's sweet as pie, and when his father realized that he couldn't really do much with him, decided to ship him off to go and do research on the moon. Hence the nickname Space Boy. Other characters that were introduced, obviously, was number 2, as Hargreaves would call them, Diego. Diego was also known as the Kraken in the comic books, and this is where they took a little bit of an artistic license. They decided, hey, we're going to do this because for production reasons, it's a lot easier. Diego has some very unique abilities. He pretty much has, I would say, a luck-based ability where he can make sure he always hits his target. Now, in the comics, it's slightly different than that. So I think this was a good artistic choice that they decided to do. Number 3 is Allison. Allison's also known as the Rumor because she has a ability. Yes, and don't miss all 3 volumes from Umbrella Academy coming out by a Dark Horse. All hail the Dark Horse. Which, of course, you can always check out, at any of your local retailers or online as well. Number 3, Allison is called the Rumor. She has a telepathic type of ability, but it's more of a forceful. But she has to say, I heard a rumor first. Wow, this is a very unique ability to have. It's quite jarring considering if you think about it. You just can't even get to force. You could forcibly tell somebody what to do. Like, that's just messed up. Honestly and truly. Sorry, just responding to the chat here. And this is also where they decided to take a little artistic license from the comic books. If you look in the comics right there, Allison's white, but in the comics they decided to make her African American. I have no problem with that. A good actor is a good actor regardless of what's on the outside. Don't judge the book by the cover. So Allison's number 3. She is the Rumor. Then number 4 right here is Klaus. We all love Klaus. Klaus, I think, has been the standout character for me in the show, only because the actor is doing such a phenomenal job with him, and his nickname is the Seance. We come to find out that he has these type of abilities that he can speak with the dead. As the show goes on, it goes even further. But one thing that I do love that they did that is comically accurate is that he has the hello and goodbye tattoos on his hands. Klaus very much plays the lazy loner love child, and he's very much in the wind, and he's groovy like that. Absolutely. Okay, glad to hear. Not showing up on my end. That's why I'm just asking. So then we've got after that number 5. Now number 5 is probably also the standout of the show because number 5 is the time traveler of the group. He actually does come back at the point just after their father's funeral in the first episode, before, and he hasn't aged one bit. We come to find out this dude has been through some stuff, and that's putting it very, very, very freaking mildly. One thing that's great about this is that he had disappeared using his time travel abilities, but when he came back to the original timeline, he was the same age, even though he had a whole life and became an old man. Because of such, growing up and being so old and grumpy and being a codger and living on his own, he, at 15 years old, has one of the best freaking I don't give a attitudes out there. So kudos to the actor for being able to portray this role. And as he's gotten older in the role, it's gone really, really well. Gotcha. All right. Then next we have Ben. Now, Ben was the one that was quote unquote dead. Yep. So Ben was the one that died on a mission. Ben has this unique ability. The best way for me to describe it is that he can make tentacles and become this sort of monster. Now, why he's not called the Kraken, I have no idea. Oh, excuse me. Been a long day. When you go out for breakfast with your buddies, it really takes a toll on you. And then lastly, there's number 7. And we're not going to talk about number 7 because they are pretty much the bad guy for the season. But let's go down these first 10 episodes. So, first one obviously is, we don't see each other at weddings or funerals. It's the first episode of the show. We learn about the whole background of the series, about the 43 women in 1989, and now we're in, normal time, more or less. The kids live in the kids have lived in a gorgeous mansion in New York City. And they have been taken care of by a highly intelligent, genetically altered monkey and a robot maid, whom of which Diego has a very odd relationship with, and I think that's because he has mother trauma. So you got to give him that, and he just called her mom the whole time. It's just kind of funny how they just like, okay, here's the thing, they've decided to put it all out right there at the beginning. All right, thank you, I appreciate it. They decided to just put it all right out there, and 5 jumps through the portal, and then also fending off a weird attack from some weirdos at the donor shop. 5 ends up at number 7, Vanya's house, and saying that because of his time travel shenanigans, he realized the world's going to end in 8 days. This is the number one thing that's going to happen every single time when it comes to the Umbrella Academy. What's interesting is that every single season, the world's going to end. So that's what it is. It really comes down to it. And again, I am not going to show you the last one, but we're going to go back here and we're going to talk about, Luther and all them, because what they did very smartly, that yes, it's a 7-person family, but it's 10 episodes per season. So we really use the first episode just to, ground everybody. And this is what's going on. There's a whole bunch of tropes that go on. They make all these great jokes. It really sets the tone. And then to follow it up, and then they start really focusing on individual episodes. So as it goes down, there was the donut shop, and the police started interfering. And then we meet Eudora, and then these 2 agents, Cha-Cha and Hazel, who are tailing 5, but we don't know why. That's something that's going on, who find the witness who saw the fight at the donut shop and then start interrogating them. Luker finds out that Diego was in a boxing match at the time of, their father's death instead of actually being by his side. 5 is being helped up by Klaus, who attempts to find the owner of some weird prosthetic eye, who thinks is connected to the apocalypse. This just goes all back and forth. Vanya meets her newest violin student, Leonard, who I actually, just thinking about it as I was doing prep, completely forgot about his weirdness. Hazel and Cha-Cha corner 5 in a department store. Allison attempts to come to terms with the events of watching recordings of their family, and they believe that Luther, she starts to understand that Luther thinks everybody's suspicious of, their dad's death. And then at the end of the episode, 5 sees all these, jumps to the future and sees the apocalypse and uncovers his siblings' bodies. I mean, that's just crazy right there. Episode 2, we're going to do all this and just throw it right at you. It's not necessarily a focused episode. Again, we're still establishing, context. We're establishing the world. We're making all the concrete, what's the word I'm looking for? Solid. And that's a lot. And I don't think that's really a bad thing. I think that because the Umbrella Academy is so, what's the word I'm looking for? It is so very unique into itself and so out there, to just out of the fire into the frying pan with it. It works, and it works well. We really start to see how much Klaus is just like this lazy, and these are just his coping mechanisms. He's lazy, he's not with it, he's an alcoholic, he's a drug, he likes to use recreational drugs. And we find out later that it's because he can't really control his powers, his abilities all that well. So that's the way to keep out the voices. Um, I thought it was really, really smart to do. Now, after that, we have the episode Extraordinary. It's interesting to watch this because during the episode, we find that Allison and Luther begin to suspect their mother, the robot, of Reginald's death. Diego and Eudora, investigate the ruins of the department store as Hazel and Cha-Cha try to kill Five for whatever reason, who continues on this whole track of trying to track down this prosthetic eye. Um, Vanya starts struggling with her violin career. Now, if you notice, we didn't talk about Vanya and her abilities because we don't know that she has any, and she's always kind of been the ugly duckling of the group. So she has major depression issues. She tried to find comfort in her violin. She did become a classically trained violinist and became, a player in one of the local orchestras and also offers lessons. That's where Leonard comes in. What's interesting is that Vanya has always lived in her sibling's shadow. So during a flashback scene, she actually sees a comic book of her siblings because, they were put on a pedestal back when they were younger, wearing their little domino masks and their little outfits, saving the world every time. So she decides that, well, if they can be in a book, why can't I do mine? And she decides to write her own memoir called Extraordinary: My Life as Number 7. During it, she's really dealing with her emotions, trying to figure out, um, her siblings' hurt and horrified reactions, and how she really just threw all of her siblings under the bus. I mean, your siblings is a very, very loose term. Um, Cha-Cha and Hazel also break into the mansion and attack the siblings, and that's when we finally get to see a lot of the powers really being used. Um, After the fight, though, Vanya had gone to Leonard's and the agents had kidnapped Klaus. And again, there's so much stuff going on. There was, in a brief shot of Reginald's, you can see a portrait during the Cha-Cha and Hazel fight that breaks, and it was shot 7 times because 7 kids? I don't know. Diego confessed to stealing their father's monocle. Diego flashes back to the moment he overcame his speech impediment by the help of Mom, the robot. It's still, again, a lot going on. It's only episode 3, and we got to give them credit because they're just world building, and they're world building so freaking well. Now, after that, we got episode 4, which is called The Man on the Moon. And this is where we finally start to get Luther's backstory. That guy right there. Several years ago, Luther was the only child left in the mansion because he was too afraid to go out into the world. Allison wanted to become famous, which she did. Klaus wanted to get high. Diego hated being under their father's thumb. Vanya obviously was living in everybody else's shadow. So Luther was the only one there still because during a mission he got so severely injured. So Reginald gave him some type of serum to fix his condition, and that's what put his body in the state it is, as opposed to the head swap onto a gorilla's body. But they did a good job still portraying that largeness. As things are going on, Hazel and Cha-Cha have a difficult time getting information out of Klaus because Klaus is Klaus. And I love him just for it. You can't go wrong with Klaus. He's probably my favorite character out of the whole series. And just the stuff he's gone through between seasons 1, 2, and 3, and God knows what they're going to do with him season 4. I'm here for it. Diego starts confiding in Eudora, the waitress from the donut shop, about the attack. And then having one thing did slip from Klaus, that Five was searching for somebody with this prosthetic eye. Cha Cha and Hazel finally go and have a good lead. Um, Allison decides to go and hang out with Vanya, and they finally say, "Hey, let's have a girls' night." Sure, woo! They go back to have a few drinks. It's a good time. Luther and Diego finally have a good fight before they find Five, eventually stumbling on him in the library. Klaus makes contact using his seance powers of Hazel and Cha-Cha's victims. Um, yeah, and then as things happen to do their thing, uh, Eudora's dead and Diego finds him. So, yeah, everything going on there. There's just so much. Like, I don't even know if I could do this all in an hour mark or 21 minutes. This is going to be fun. We might go faster. All right. Episode 5. Man. Oh, you're saying we have to go back? Well, number 5 is literally the 5th episode, and we finally get a little bit more backstory about number 5. What the hell has happened to him after he had disappeared into the future, into this post-apocalyptic world? 5 used to work for a person called the Handler, who made him part of the Commission. The Commission is a sanctioned, unsanctioned idea of keeping the timeline straight and to not cause the apocalypse. I was like, okay, preserving the timeline, I can get behind this. I like this. Let's just say their methods aren't always on the up and up. When they do find eventually Cha-Cha and Hazel find Klaus to get their briefcase, that briefcase being the thing that's keeping them anchored is technically their time machine. It was quite interesting to see that, it ends up in a war out of place and gets destroyed. Allison starts getting suspicious of Vanya's new friend Leonard and decides to look him up. She can't find anything. Luther decides to accompany Five to go and meet up with his handler, but things go sideways, and then Klaus and Diego decide to have a fight. And the handler arrives, offers Five a job back at the Commission, which Five accepts, but with the condition that his entire family survives. The whole time this has been going on, Vanya's always been on medication. She was a kid. She forgot to take her meds, and this is where we start seeing her powers develop. What happens is every time she starts playing music, there's these strange waves and distortions coming out. It's beautiful, gorgeous white light. Yeah. So it was quite a bit to finally see Vanya's powers happening, and I'm still not going to allude to the picture that I have up here until we get to the end of season 1, because you just can't. So episode 6 after that, the day that wasn't. It's a very, very beautiful day. As Luther tries to convince the rest of his siblings that, hey, we're going to be doing we're going to stop the apocalypse, Klaus, Diego, and Allison are really, really iffy to step up. Think about it. Klaus has been just surviving, just being a couch bum, going, yeah, man, it's cool. I got this. It's okay. Diego has been trying to do this weird idea of vigilantism, and Allison has a whole life being somebody famous in Hollywood. So it's like, hello, guys, we got to fix this. We got to save the world. It's pretty much like fighting with your own siblings, and I can get that. As Luther's going through his father's stuff because he highly regarded him and respected him for whatever reason, he finds out that all the correspondence that Luther has sent down from being on the moon and doing all this research, his father never opened. It was just a means and an end to get his guilt off his chest and to give Luther, who had no purpose, a purpose. Also, during that time, Cha-Cha is finally told by the commission to terminate Hazel. And then when Five arrives back to the commission to get his first assignment as a case manager, not just being an agent, the handler gets in the way and tries to find out more about this apocalypse that Five has found. Klaus enlists Diego to help sober up enough to contact Dave. Meanwhile, Vanya still is trying to find her father's notebook. In Leonard's things, and how Leonard got it is really weird. And they learn that Hargreaves, Reginald, was actually suppressing her powers. That's why we saw those boo, 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 boo sound waves and fluctuations. Following the altercation with the handler, Fives jumps back into time to Luther's meeting earlier that day, and he orders his siblings to get their crap together. Convinced to protecting a weird man called Harold Jenkins is the key to saving, to allowing the apocalypse to happen. I like this whole back and forth that they were trying to do. You also start to see that Luther and Allison had this very unique, weird relationship, that they developed feelings for each other over their time being together, and more than in the familial sense, which, granted, they're not technically family, but they are. And they have this, there's been they did a flashback scene where Luther and Allison's dancing. It's, a dream sequence. It's quite a bit. They used to sneak out as kids. You really start to go into this real space where you think, wow, these guys do love each other, and more in one way. So the day that was, episode 7. Now, Harold grew up as a big fan of the Umbrella Academy. Spent 12 years in jail because he killed his father for, being an abuser. And things are starting to finally build up. Diego, Five, and Allison, find Jenkins' file, and Allison finally realizes that this guy, Harold Jenkins, is really Leonard, Vanya's, number 7's, quote unquote boyfriend or love interest. So now everybody's going into who the F is this guy? At the same time, Diego gets arrested for Eudora's murder. There's just all this stuff going on. Leonard has been so obsessed with the academy that he figured that after how he got Reginald's notebook from Klaus in a very roundabout way, he figured, well, I'm just going to break in. And, he's being the ultimate creeper fanboy. That's it. Leonard meets Vanya at the lake house, and they start really testing and pushing her powers. And the fun thing is that as things are going on, Leonard is attacked by several men, and Vanya uses her powers and pushes this huge major force field, and Leonard now is hospitalized, loses an eye. I got his teeth. Excuse me. Hazel outsmarts Cha-Cha, refuses to kill her. There's, as much as it's a story about 7 people, there's a big, huge cast outside of the main 7 Hargreaves kids. And they really keep going back and forth trying to write this. So instead of killing Cha-Cha, they leave her cuffed to the motel so he can run away with Agnes, the woman from the donut shop. Again, everything in its brother just keeps getting thrown in, and the way everything's written is just so well done. So, Cuckoo Leonard decides to check himself at the hospital. Vanya is all sorts of shooketh. Guided by their dad's powers, they can try to awaken Vanya's powers, but Allison finds that there's an officer on scene outside looking for the reservation looking for stuff for an investigation. Wow, can I say words and use my mouth? Allison apparently does remember at some point they were trying to train Vanya to use her powers, and uses the violin to try and use it as a focal point. Oh, a focal point, you say? Okay. Now things are getting a little tighter and makes sense. So I can get behind that. A lot of, characters use a focal point to be able to, these magic guys use wizards and rings and books and all that kind of stuff. Sorcerers use staves, druids use a tree. Excuse me for going D&D there for a little bit. So as Allison starts to remember that Reginald once made her convince Vanya that she was ordinary, because that's why Vanya can't remember. She used her powers as the rumor and say, I got a secret. Vanya was convinced that she didn't have powers, and being so pissed at her sister, using her abilities actually slashes her sister's throat because, you know what? I got a secret, can't say. With a Klaus and Pogo the monkey decide tell Luther and Five that Sir Reginald's death was a suicide, and Diego had just gotten out of jail. And then they find their sister just bleeding out from the neck wound. It's so much going on, but that is the moment right there in season 1 where Vanya goes bad because she's more pissed at her siblings about the fact that she has powers and they just kept them from her. And then in episode 9 we start, Allison goes back to the mansion. Leonard talks to the grief-stricken Vanya about finding out what's going on with their family. She finds her father's notebook, realizes that she has amazing powers, and then with everything that has gone on, Five and Klaus and I think Diego had learned that the prosthetic eye was technically Leonard's, but it was a different name. It's all smartly written all together. Realizing that the apocalypse happens the apocalypse happens roundabout way because of Leonard, because Leonard just was able to let Vanya figure out that she has powers, and Vanya gets pissed and decides to say, screw the world. There's a lot going on. And then finally in episode 10, we get the episode called The White Violin. And that in turn is also, as I scroll through really fast and say hi to all the kids, boom, right there. We find out that Vanya is the white violin. She is the reason that, the apocalypse happens. So Vanya decides to destroy the mansion, kills Pogo in the process, which, anybody who knows me, anytime you do anything with an animal in any comic series, TV, whatnot, I'm over it, I'm done. The handler comes back, berates Cha-Cha and Hazel for failure to stop Vanya. But Five visits the handler who offers a chance to, leave before the apocalypse happens. The siblings come up with a plan, and going to the Icarus Theater, they see Vanya's concert begins. These are Diego attack Vanya, but they can't stop her. She's way OP. Klaus tries to manifest Ben because he has been able to talk to Ben this entire time because he's been dead, and that's Klaus's powers. And the fact that Klaus tried so hard to manifest Ben and use his abilities, that was freaking awesome. Luther decides to kamikaze at Vanya, but again, her powers versus Luther's boat. They're very, 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 very close to killing them before Allison steps up with a gun. Well, I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm going to tell you a secret. It'll work. You're going to need something a little. But instead of shooting Vanya, Allison fires the gun near her ear to distract her because she's a musician. Why shoot her in the head? You don't want to shoot your sister. You want to immobilize her. So, next thing you know, Allison fires the gun, causing her to drop her brothers and send a blast of energy up straight at the moon. The moon. That big, huge white ball in the sky. Everybody ever played Portal 2. That is the secret to the final boss. It hits the moon, a large chunk comes falling down Earth, causing the apocalypse. And as Earth goes up in flames, plot twist, 5 sends them back in time. He overshoots the landing, and next thing you know, we're in Umbrella Academy Season 2. So now they have to still stop the same apocalypse in 2019. But now we're in Dallas, Texas in 1963. And that's where Season 2 starts. Like, we really went from 2019, where Umbrella Academy started, and I don't even know when did Season 2 start. Let's see. Season 2 Umbrella. When did that drop on Netflix? That dropped in July of 2020. So we literally waited a whole freaking year to go from 10 episodes to the next 10 episodes. Wow, that's really a color change right there. How crazy is that? And that's, the modern television market as it is. You have to pay attention. You sometimes don't see a show for a whole year. Everybody lands in 1963. It's right now, it's Cold War stuff. Everybody's worried about the Soviets. The Soviets are pulling up, and they just start fighting the Reds. Hazel pulls them out of the way for the missile strike, and then it takes them to 10 days. They see this big mushroom cloud, and then 5 goes to another time, 10 days earlier, leaving 5 to find his siblings. And they meet this guy named Elliot, who is a conspiracy theorist who has this wonderful, big, huge TV shop and no customers. So they're living pretty much in the loft of the TV store. The other weird thing is that even though 5's ended up there in 1963, everybody else landed there just slightly off just a bit. Allison landed much earlier, enough to the point that she actually was able to create a life for herself, and that really plays into the story so hard, and kudos to the actress for doing it. It was amazing to see that. Klaus ended up in San Francisco, which is great and so on point simply for the fact that it's Klaus, and Klaus in 1963, it's near the Sun of Love in San Francisco in the Bay Area. My audio is all static. Any better? This is why we do it live, ladies and gentlemen. This is why I need a new thing. So what happened to my other? That's there. Lost one. No. Give me a minute. Let's see what's going on here. It's a static echo. I don't know. This is why I need to buy a new microphone. Please hold. Look at my face. Look at my background. Enjoy the background. There's a lot of things. Somebody can name something that they don't know, or possibly know? Name things. Check 1, check 2, echo, echo. Can you hear me now? Yes, no, maybe. Yes, but it's static. Damn it. How about now? I turned off the fan. Any luck? Oh. Is that going to work at all? Because, yay, live television. Good now. Okay, so we're just going to go live on this because fuck these. That's my 1F for the half hour. All right. So, because everybody got stranded all over time and space in Dallas, Diego's been institutionalized because he knows when JFK is going to get assassinated. Vanya has landed in this family dynamic being taken care of by Carl and Sissy, of which that goes all one way. Klaus is in San Francisco, again, being the love child that he is. So it's a perfect place. I mean, geez, could you imagine what it would be like to be in the Mission in 1963? 1, burritos. 2, summer of love. Let's go for it. Allison is now part of the civil rights movement. And Luther, being big bad Luther as he is, the only thing he can do is underground cage matches. Because what do you do in 1963 during, the Red Scare? It's interesting how they just took everything and turned it on its ear. And I think it's really smart. And I don't have any of my pictures or anything up right now, do I? Because I changed the scene from everything to, let me change that. Bam! My face there. I like my face there. Cool. Try that again. That goes up here. Back in frame, back in focus. it's funny that as Klaus is trying to get back, he sees Ben, but at the same time, Ben is only visible to Klaus, so the car breaks down at one point and they start fighting with each other, and there's a passerby who literally just sees this guy flailing around on the ground. Again, it goes to the hilarious comedy chops of the actor to be able to have a fight with a ghost that's not there. The next episode is called The Frankel Footage. Now, this is where we really start to get real deep into the extra lore. So we start seeing things about the commission, and we find out that the handler had survived their gunshot. And the commissioner, or the handler, goes back to the commission to find AJ, fish with a body who now occupies her office. Literally, it's a fishbowl in a guy's body. And she's been demoted. After Luther rebuffs himself, Five finds this part called the Frankel Footage that Hazel had, been given before his death, collects Diego and Lila. Lila is Diego's girlfriend that he met in the insane asylum, of which you can also see her on Star Trek Discovery Season 5 as a fantastic villain. Great job there. They decide to, on their little road trip, find where their dad is from. So they go back to one of Reginald's old companies, and then they get the crap beaten out of them by Reginald and Pogo. After rejecting Five, Luther notices that Vanya is helping Carl into the car. Carl drops his wallet. Luther takes the address and say, "Where's Vanya?" Well, Vanya doesn't recognize him. And they just keep going on. Raymond is arrested for assault and battery and meets Klaus in prison. Again, another character that gets introduced. And Klaus returns to the abandoned mansion with a painting of him in it to sleep. It's so weird. There's so much going on in this episode. It's a lot to take in. We got bullet time kind of idea sequence, which was kind of fun. One of the inmates that Allison sees has Klaus's hello and goodbye tattoo, so it puts two and two together, because Klaus really does get to have some fun stuff that happens throughout the rest of it. When they try to break in, there was a key under the doormat. Like, they really followed some really good fun tropes. Five tries to let Diego, using his sleuthy, roguey, stealthy skills, to pick the lock into Reginald's office, but then goes poof, poof, and just teleports the other side. Now, let me be very clear. Fives has more of a teleporting ability than he does have a time traveling ability. He can use the time travel stuff when under extreme pressure. So, yeah, that's a good way to talk about it. We get the next episode called The Swedish Job. Not the Italian job, the Swedish job. And we finally get part of Klaus's past. Now, usually a lot of TV shows will set up and do the one-off episodes in the first season. But because Klaus is so unique, we get a little bit of his backstory and how he ended up the way he was, and was taken in by a rich lady, and next thing you know, he's using Ben to help with his ability. He's using his abilities to talk to Ben to show this woman that he has some sort of mysticism, and eventually he becomes a cult leader. I'm not going to say prophet. He becomes a freaking cult leader. And that just comes back to haunt him, all the time. Diego wakes up to find that Lila is treating a stab wound after the home invasion, and then things happen from there because crazy loves crazy. Vanya takes the car and returns to Dallas, but runs into the Swedes, and they're just weird and odd, and they kind of just hang out there the whole time. But they're another group, again, this is just, it's not just the idea of the group dynamic. They really just keep adding in on top of it, on top of it, on top, but they write it well. Following the reunion with everybody and Raymond getting out of prison, Klaus goes to the hardware store where he meets a young version of Dave. Klaus then tells Ben that Dave is enlisted, that Dave enlisted, and that Kennedy dies on the next day. Because again, we all know about that. Fives brings Vanya to one of Luther's fights, but Luther's so ticked off that Allison got married after everything that had gone down between their own relationship that's the only thing that he wants to do at this point. And then there's this whole thing that Lila just happens to call her mom, who also happens to be Five's handler. Now, on that note, I think that's probably the best point to stop at. I wasn't going to stop at episode 5 because there's 10 episodes this season, but I think that's big enough of a cliffhanger to go off of, a big old oh crap moment. So let's talk about what we've gone over so far with Umbrella Academy. Talk 13 episodes. I have not been able to find anything wrong with this show at all. I think it is fun. It is quirky. Everybody gets enough time to shine. I think Diego needs a little bit more, but we get that eventually. The whole time travel aspect and how thing is so fluid really does put standard time travel episodes on its ear. Or episodes, not TV series and movies, really does give it a hard push of, hey, we can change the whole concept, because right now they are in a position where they have to fix a disaster in 1963, but make sure that disaster doesn't happen to affect 2019, but they still have to fix the disaster that happens in 2019. So the causality of everything really comes down to how they play things out now, and to have TV written like that, it is much bigger than going to 1985B, if you catch my drift. All in all, the way they wrote Luther in this, I'm glad he gets the redemption. Allison eventually is going to have to come to terms with everything that's going on. Vanya and her story, I've only really alluded to it, but it's gone very well. There's a bunch of stuff going on with domestic violence and bringing light to it, and finding your true self, and you can't go wrong with that. So, having that said, I want you guys to come back next week. We're going to be talking more Umbrella Academy just before the season 4 final season premieres on August 8th. Now, in the meantime, don't forget, you got to make sure that you do your homework assignment. Now, you've seen it over here at least once or twice, but I'm going to remind you, everybody, again, make sure that you let the bosses know how we're doing by making sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and then make sure you smack and tap that thumbs up to let the boss Michael know that we're doing a good job. It is con season with everything coming up, and we want to make sure that you are wearing your nerd pride on your sleeve. Make sure you go out, you get those you do what we do here at Nerd Initiative. You hit those QR codes. You let the bosses know that we're doing good. And while you're at it, hit the QR codes. Wear your nerd on your sleeve right there, Nerd Initiative. Get your stuff. Make sure to check in tomorrow. We got Turn a Page going on. We're coming off of the heels of San Diego Comic-Con. We're going to be doing the infamous Iron Man #1, where Doom is Iron Man. So make sure you tune in 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Wednesday, we're going to have all those comic book reviews that you can't go wrong with. And speaking of comic reviews, did you know Rich, our guy from Wrestling Night Live, right off the top rope, is now writing reviews with us too? Because, boom, that's Rich right there. And Ken, Thursday night, Wrestling Night Live. We've got so much stuff going on. Don't forget, you can always stay here with TV Talk. You can follow me personally over here at Off the Cuff Tom. Right now, I've got a lot of stuff going on with Power Morphicon coming up, so I'm doing almost nearly, only because I had to miss a day of work, daily videos talking about Power Morphicon. Make sure you're signed up to both the Nerd Initiative and myself, particularly on Instagram, because that's where you're going to see everything. Other than that, my name is Off the Cuff Tom. It is